How's it going there, man? Can you see and hear me?
I sure can, David. It's a pleasure to be here today for another episode of State of Cybercrime. And it looks like we've got some fancy new production going on.
Oh yeah.
We're so happy to have you here for another episode of State of Cybercrime. My name's Matt Radalak, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague.
David Gibson. I guess that's my cue, right?
Yeah. And we're going to talk about a lot of things today, the ByBit heist definitely being one of them. So thanks for being here today, and let's get into it.
Yeah. What do we got first up?
Oh, is there any good news? For those of you joining us for the first time, oftentimes everything in security is doom and gloom. The end of the world and our eventual demise to our robot overlords is imminent. But we always like to start the show with some good news, and there is a little bit of good news to discuss. First and foremost, storing personal data in foreign data centers always carries risk, but some countries want to maintain some jurisdiction over that data in this new concept that they're calling data embassies, where they aim to limit the risk of natural disasters, geopolitical conflicts, and other major events by storing data in other localities. For example, Estonia and Monaco have agreements with Luxembourg to host their data, ensuring it remains secure and inviolable. And similarly, Singapore is considering India as their data safe haven. What do you think about this, David?
Yeah, I think, this is it obviously from a disaster recovery perspective, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, think about with Monaco, such a, small geographical, territory, right? It just makes sense to have some redundancy there. But it does kind of start to make you think about some of the the requirements around processing of data within country, within region, and that sort of consequence as well, right?
Yeah, and I thought about two things for this. One being, is this really that novel, right? And two being, aren't people worried about like government snooping that can occur, like, and losing that control, but maybe the security is perceived to be worth it? These are some things I think to think about.
Yeah, and I think certainly with encryption at rest, the physical security of the disks themselves, you can some people would probably feel pretty safe with it. Even if there was a conflict in the future with that country or so, but that's never want to put all your eggs in one basket, right?
Yeah, or all your data in one data center, I guess, is the story here. Now,
Yeah.
is there any good news? Is there any other good news, David?
Or all your crypto in one crypto exchange, I guess. Yeah. So this I guess the this story here is about uranium, which is a DeFi, a decentralized finance platform. And what that is, good analogy, it's a little like a farmer's market instead of grocery store, instead of like one organization that's responsible for your banking. It's kind of like individuals, or, smaller, smaller organizations. It's not one centralized kind of organization that takes a cut of everything. And the way that these DeFi platforms work is there's a smart contract that governs what happens. And you can think about that. It's supposed to be kind of as simple as a vending machine, but it's for financial agreements. Like with a vending machine, you put $1 in, you get your soda or whatever. With the DeFi smart contracts, you set up a contract where if you do the work and the work is accepted, you get the money. So in the what happened was in 2021 there were two vulnerabilities in their smart contract program that allowed attackers to steal about $50 million. And a lot of it was dormant. A lot of it was laundered for since for over 3 years. But recently, and this is the good news, is through all the tracing and the hard work, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York and Homeland Security Investigations in San Diego were able to retrieve or seize back 31 million of that 50 million. So some good news there. Interesting stuff on how this crypto is working.
Yeah, and I think, one thing we've seen over the last few episodes is that it looks like law enforcement agencies around the world are getting better at tracing and recovering crypto. So crypto is not necessarily as anonymous as we once thought. Speaking of things that might not be as they seem, on our next segment, we'll talk about all the happenings of AI and AI. Now, this is one I'm really excited about. So much so, I'm actually going to be in Amsterdam next Wednesday, 2 Wednesdays from now, talking about this very topic. Privacy experts and regulators in the Ministry of Justice published an analysis on the impact of Microsoft Copilot on data privacy, urging organizations to halt its use. This data privacy authority criticized the lack of transparency regarding data access, its usage, and experts are warning that these systems could be targets for attackers. As a result of this, Amsterdam decided to abandon its plans for deploying smart traffic lights due to privacy and security concerns. The system aimed at using mobile phones and GPS data to optimize traffic flow and reduce congestion. Now, David, I gotta admit, when I heard all this, I thought, Copilot can be deployed safely, and I'll probably talk about that more in 2 weeks when I'm in Amsterdam. But don't we give all this data to social media and Google Maps already? Like, what's so different about giving it to a AI or a Copilot than giving it to all the apps and social media sites that we already are?
Yeah, we really want to cut out the middleman, I guess. The it's interesting. I think there obviously it can be dangerous if you put your personal information into a co-pilot. I feel like, as you said, you can do a pretty good job of trying to eliminate that data going into Copilot, not from the prompt, but yeah, the users are potentially a vulnerability there. But to your point, it seems like users are apt to put sensitive data or you know personal data in lots of different places that then AI can go mine anyway. So yeah, it is a good set of questions, but I do like the insistence on transparency. I think that that's good for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what's going on with this, thousands of keys and passwords?
Oh yeah, this is kind of fun. But it's kind of from the not that surprising department. It i- this is about the Common Crawl data set. Now, for those of you that don't know, Common Crawl is an open source data set. It's over 100 petabytes that you can mine. It's been collected since 2008. It's growing at about 250 terabytes a month compressed. And a lot of the models, GPT, Llama, T5, are using that as a training data set. So a company called Trufflehog decided to sample about 400 terabytes of that data, and they found a lot of credentials. I imagine you can find all sorts of interesting stuff in this data set, but they were looking for credentials and they found quite a few, um, at least 12,000 or so. And some of those were repeated an awful lot of times. Like the walk score API key apparently had appeared over 57,000 times. And that's the amount of times it's repeated makes regurgitation of that key much more likely. Also, when keys are in the models, they're vulnerable to prompt injection or training data extraction and some of these techniques. So, I think this is something that's going to come up more and more. Is what can we get out of these models because of the training data that was put inside, and how can we make sure that everything is safe?
Yeah, it's almost like we're rushing into it a little bit.
Yeah, I would say that it does feel that way, and I don't know if we have much choice, but it does feel that way.
Now, I wasn't sure if this belonged in our good news segment or our AI segment. Maybe it's a little bit
Yep.
of both. Microsoft is taking legal action against cyber criminals that abuse AI services. They've identified people from Iran, the UK, China, and Vietnam as the primary developers of malicious tools used to bypass the safeguards of AI services, including Microsoft's Azure OpenAI service. In a couple of cases, these tools were used to generate some pretty harmful content, including like inappropriate, unauthorized images of celebrities and other types of people. And what the lawsuit aims to do is dismantle those illicit operations and really put out a warning, a statement that deters others from doing the same activities.
Yeah, this in this one, there's a group that's an operation. I think they've named it Storm 2139. And the way that they operate is they get some stolen credentials that will give them access to the AI services. And they've got their operation divided into creators, providers, and deep fakers. And
They
so,
even dox lawyers at one point, like posting the name,
yeah,
personal
so
information, photos of their cases. I mean, and it's hard to tell, like, is it the real one? Is it a fake one? And there's a bit of, disruption in addition to disinformation that I see coming out of this.
yeah, so I'm glad that this operation looks like it's in the process of getting shut down, and hopefully more of that can be good news. But it's going to be quite a cat and mouse game, I'm sure.
Now, we're still talking about DeepSeek. What's the word here?
Yeah, so I went back and looked at there's so much when this came out. $593 billion market cap change in Nvidia when this was announced. Most of which I think they've recovered, but I think everybody's got some time now to unpack it, and think about it. And a lot of folks have been testing the model. And from a security perspective, some researchers have tested the security of the model in terms of how easy it is to jailbreak, how easy it is to do prompt injection, toxicity. Is it, can they get it to generate malware?
Yeah, or virus,
And
and it's not even giving that consistent of answers. It's also failing like basic usage and functionality tests, right?
yes, yes. And from a security perspective, it's doing poorly on all of these tests right now. It's only passing in the training data leak scenario. It does worst in creating malware. So apparently, you can get it to create malware pretty well. And another scary thing from a security perspective is for root security found some code that forwards sensitive data to China Mobile, right? And that's kind of a concern there. So in response, there've been some warnings against usage, and then some are going a little bit further. So, for
Or is
example,
banning like, yeah, DoD, other,
yeah,
what was it, Australia or Taiwan, limiting how much it can be used.
exactly. And South Korea even went so far as to remove the chatbot app from Google Play in the App Store. Italy also ordered DeepSeek to stop or to limit the data processing to comply with GDPR. But I guess the good news is DeepSeek is hard at work at R2.
Could say
And
it's seeking deep.
what's that?
One could even say it's seeking deep information.
Yeah, one could say that. I would probably be more likely to say that than you on most days.
Let's jump on to our next segment, vulnerable vulnerabilities. Well, we're going to talk about the threat actor that keeps on giving. Salt Typhoon is still a raging storm, exploiting various Cisco vulnerabilities and targeting the technology supply chain. Might not surprise you, though. The group is exploiting older and known vulnerabilities in Cisco's iOS XE operating system in order to gain unauthorized access. And patches for CVE 2023-2019, 20198 and CVE 2023-20273 are available and have been widely available. Now, these attacks are affecting various sectors. At first, it was heavily focused on telecommunications, now also expanding to things like government agencies. And CISA, the U.S. Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, has issued warnings and recommendations around immediate patching of systems to mitigate this threat. Now, digging into Salt Typhoon a little bit, we found that they're also got some other techniques that we want to share. One, they'll abuse API keys from things like privileged access management systems and cloud application providers. So if you have apps that are connected to a PAM or some type of cloud app and they get onto a host that has one of those, it's very likely they're going to steal those and reuse those. They may also abuse service principals within OAuth applications in order to get administrative privileges to do things like send emails or OneDrive links or exploit data via the graph from SharePoint. The danger here being that if some one of those compromised OAuth applications had privileges to interact with Exchange Web Services API, the threat actors would then also be able to, almost permanently exfiltrate emails via EWS. So Salt Typhoon, still a raging storm. Definitely pass those Cisco boxes if you haven't already, and keep an eye out for abuse of API keys and service principals.
Yeah, and speaking of other things that you've got a patch out there, there's about 5 or 6 or so CVEs that are concerning Cisco VPN devices, the RV series, not to be confused with their recreational vehicle, I guess. That was a dad joke, MJ. And I'll keep working on it. But also vulnerabilities on Windows servers, apparently Windows 7 or later, and then server 2008 and up. CISA has given everybody until March to patch these exploits because they've kind of moved on from the proof of concept phase, and they're now being actively exploited. So these are essentially, if you've got some of these Cisco VPN devices and obviously the Windows servers, right? These are pretty important patches to get applied.
Yeah, and I think someone was asking, do they have until March? They have until March 23rd. So there's a
Oh
few
yeah,
more
thank
days
you.
left before the CISA deadline has expired.
Yep, thank you for that.
Now, Broadcom has released urgent patches for 3 critical vulnerabilities in VMware products, including ESXi Workstation and VMware Fusion. Those are touted as CVE 2025 424, CVE 2025 425, and CVE 2025 426, which I'll spare you from saying out loud. They're all being actively exploited, and they allow attackers to execute arbitrary code, gaining unauthorized access to systems. As always, you're strongly encouraged to apply patches to prevent those systems from potential attacks. And really, if you think about the blast radius or the potential of like your VM hosts getting compromised or the VM workstations themselves getting compromised, these are long lasting, these are persistent. This is like, the hypervisor itself or the VM workstation, definitely something you want to take seriously.
Absolutely.
Now, what's going on with Dracula?
Dracula, there's a I guess this is a phishing as a service or a FAS. And it's what's interesting about this is it allows the attacker to replicate a website very quickly, like 10 minutes. So you put in, a known website and it'll recreate it in your domain, which makes it a ton easier to phish. So it's kind of rapidly helping people carry out these phishing campaigns. It also has a mechanism to monetize the stolen credit cards. This was interesting. Basically, they take the stolen credit card and they add it to a digital wallet, which they put on a burner phone that then they sell. And so this is something new to watch out for. I think really from a phishing perspective, it's just very convincing. If you send somebody to what looks like a complete, well, it's a clone of the website. So it's going to be harder, I think, for normal users to really spot that. Actually,
Yeah,
harder for
and
anybody to spot it.
I think I misspoke. I think it's Darkula and not Dracula, which almost makes it sound scarier.
That is true. That is true. I think it's understanding. I don't know if we can actually see that sort of mix up there very easily, but yeah, good call out.
Well, let's jump onto the danger zone, our last segment for today. First thing I want to talk about is the FBI telling everybody to back up their data. There's this ransomware group called Ghost. They believe to be operating out of China. They're exploiting known vulnerabilities in Fortinet, FortOS, Adobe Cold Fusion, Microsoft SharePoint, and Microsoft Exchange. And the FBI is really emphasizing the urgency of doing things like monitoring your public-facing applications and services, patching these vulnerabilities, and tightening down network security controls to prevent ransomware attacks. Now, David and I could talk to you all day long about how to look out for and prevent ransomware. Another thing we often encourage organizations to do is really focus on like what we call the blast radius. What could any one user or device do if they got compromised? What kind of data, what kind of systems, what kind of networks can they access? How can you limit what that is and have that assume breach mentality is something that I think is really important.
Yeah, it's interesting. I look at the exploits that this group is using, like proxy shell, the stuff, Fortinet, the stuff that we've been talking about for a long time. And the playbook is still very similar once they land, right? So the beacons, they do Mimikatz, and now, and then they're rotating their ransomware payloads. So it's that next step concern. What are the controls after they land that are going to potentially help you mitigate the attack? from a segmentation, from a detective standpoint, from a reduction of the blast radius.
And speaking about ransomware, I think this Medusa ransomware as a service is something that we're kind of finding more out about today, getting a little bit more active and, early this year, late last year, targeting stuff like critical infrastructure. What's going on here?
Yeah, they're starting to get a little bit more in the news, much more active, and they had twice as many attacks in the first 2 months of this year as they did in January and February of last year. They're going after critical infrastructure, medical, education, legal, insurance, tech, manufacturing. This is a ransomware as a service group. They're actually connected with several other groups like Mirai, and this does cause some confusion and some attribution, or misattribution. Like Medusa Locker is not actually connected with Medusa, although some people confuse it. It's similar to Ghost. They make use of exploits. Then a little bit different. They go after a lot of the remote management and monitoring software like Simple Help or AnyDesk, things like that. Once they are in, they are demanding, anywhere from like 100K to 15 million, I think, in terms of the payouts as well. But they're definitely ones that are much more active than they were.
And what about the chips? Tell me about the chips.
Oh, this was cute. Um, Apparently, there are a bunch of undocumented commands in a popular microchip. This microchip is the ESP32 by Espressive, which is only in about a billion devices. These undocumented commands were not meant to be accessible, or they were left in by mistake. So I guess the most important thing is that got to take a look if you've got home security systems by like Simply Safe or Sonoff. That's like a power management solution. There's like Wemo smart plugs. These devices hopefully will get patched, and just so stay on top of those. There's a whole lot of devices out there that use this chip, and what if somebody uses these commands, they can manipulate memory. They can do MAC address spoofing. They can do packet injection. It's not good.
Wow. Yeah. And I guess undocumented commands, legal commands are something to be thinking about. Now, let's talk about ByBit. I know that was a story that caught everybody's attention. They're a cryptocurrency exchange that has been breached to the tune of about $1.5 billion in crypto. FBI confirmed that there was a North Korean threat actor, TraderTraitor, little play on words there, exploited vulnerabilities in ByBit's Ethereum cold wallet, which allowed the threat actors to transfer more than 400,000 Ethereum to an unidentified address. This is the largest cryptocurrency known to date. And ByBit's CEO, Ben, I think it's Zhao or Zhu, if I don't pronounce that wrong, if anybody knows, assured customers that that exchange remains solvent and that their other cold wallets are secure. Now, the FBI, blockchain efforts, they're currently investigating. They want to make sure, and the company came out and said that the stolen coins have been replenished. Now, when I read this, David, I thought, wow, so $1.5 billion either got took out of their own private vaults to give it back to their customers, or are they, maybe they did a lot of it on loans. And
Yeah.
I think as our audience point out, the other thing I'd ask you to comment on is $1 billion. That's a lot of money for some North Korean threat actors. Like, what do you think they're going to do with all that?
Well, it clearly looks like it's a military thing. They looks like they've cashed out about 300 million so far, which I think is kind of irrecoverable. And I guess they're just very good at laundering the money. It looks like they don't take many breaks throughout the day, working in shifts to get that stuff laundered. And 20% of the funds now have gone like dark, meaning that they probably
Wow.
won't be able to recover it. So I thought it was also interesting, like how this happened, though. What they're blaming it on, but it looks like none of their code was really compromised, and they're not inherently insecure. It was just that one of their suppliers got hacked, and the attacker was able to manipulate some JavaScript that essentially funneled the Ethereum to their address, even though it looked like it was going to the right place.
Wow.
So that was pretty scary, huge amount of money. And I guess how they're responding to it is interesting. That I guess ByBit, by the way, which is I think the second largest crypto exchange out there. I guess Coinbase would be the largest. It's similar to Coinbase. They do some things differently, but they're trying to retrieve the funds, obviously, and they've basically created a bounty program, and they're asking members to help track where the funds are moving, so they can recover it more quickly. And one of the things that's interesting that they're doing is they're identifying folks, they're kind of labeling folks as good actors and alert or bad actors, and then they're also bridge actors, to try to kind of help people see who they're dealing with. So far, only one crypto exchange, which is EXCH with a capital X, has been labeled as an alert actor, and they apparently they intend to remain impartial, like a know your customer exchange. So this is kind of interesting in their effort to get some of this back. While it's good that they're solvent. That it seems like no individuals are out their crypto.
Well, I think that pretty much covers it for today. Thanks everybody for being here. Our show is made possible by you, our audience. We really appreciate you and the listeners that tune in after we air live. So thanks so much for being here and sharing this time with us. We look forward to hosting another episode of State of Cybercrime.